Learn the latest news involving Lukaku and his return back to Inter Milan, as today reports suggest that the club are finally open to allowing him to leave, and it does seem like if this move does go over the finishing line, it could potentially involve a player swap exchange with 3 Inter Milan players. Ton of things to discuss, ton of things to break down. I hope you guys enjoy. I want to keep things ambitious this summer. So for today's video, if you guys are happy to see Lukaku out the door, and if you're happy to see a great replacement in exchange for him, then please hit the like button and help me get 3k likes for today's video. So let's start with things, and I want to let you guys know that this is a very big story, and to make things more digestible for you guys to understand all the nuances and details in an easier way, I'm going to segment things. So to start with things, let's talk about Lukaku before moving on to the 3 Inter Milan players we are looking at as possible exchanges in this deal. Now, this story on Lukaku has come out from many reports in Italy, as well as journalists in the UK, of course, supporting the story and claims as well too. But to further understand everything, of course, the big news is that Todd Boehly has given Thomas Tuchel 100% control in this summer window when it comes to rebuilding the squads in his image. This is big news because this means that Lukaku now has that blessing to be able to leave, because Todd Boehly is going to fully support anything Thomas Tuchel wants in this window. If you guys want to hear more of my thoughts in greater detail and understand the story even more, you'll find a link in the card above. I dropped the video today, so of course after this video, give it a watch if you feel like doing that. But of course, now that Tuchel has full say on how he conducts business in the summer, that means that Lukaku will have that blessing to leave. Earlier before, there were some concerns that potentially due to the massive outlay that we spent on Lukaku, he might even stay another season if we don't get the funds and money we want. But now that Tuchel has say, and if Tuchel says he doesn't want Lukaku, then that makes it easier now to move the player on, and vice versa for the player too. Now, I do want to say this very, very quickly, but I know that Lukaku's interview back during the start of the year, he takes an L for that. No one's defending that whatsoever, but I think now that time has advanced over the many months, I feel like we're starting to maybe exaggerate things around Lukaku a bit too much at this point in time. And you guys know, I'll speak my minds, I'll say what I want, and if I don't believe something, then I'm not going to support that. And all I've been hearing is that there's no bad bloods. Lukaku's still quite popular. Him and Tuchel don't hate each other. It's literally just an ideological difference. I think Tuchel deserves a striker he needs, and Lukaku, if he feels like he can't play his best football, of course he has to go. And let's be a bit realistic now. Lukaku is like literally 30 years old. How much adaptation did we really expect from a player who was a bit surprised by how he was going to be used compared to how he originally thought he was going to be used? So it's obvious that this guy must be sold as quickly as possible during this month so we can move on to signing the players that Thomas Tuchel needs to make this team cook. Now, of course, the only fears now come down to Inter Milan, as we know that their finances aren't in the best situation. Now with us, of course, after spending so much money on the player, we're not going to take any big L's or losses. You have to think about the message that sends. For example, how many players, let's use Bakayoko as an example, have been on eternal loans every single season to no ends. Once clubs get an understanding of how they can kind of play you and game you, they're going to do that. It's really a dog-eat-dog world when it comes to transfer business. So we have to make sure that when Lukaku does go, it is done in the best possible way that still makes us look strong. Now, we know that we need a 20 million loan fee, as well as his wages being subsidized on top too to allow him to actually move on, and that's due to the amortization costs, where that's going to be the player's wages plus transfer fee divided by the contract he's on as well too, which means that we need around 20 million to make this financially feasible for us to allow the player to move on. On top of this too, we need to see a guaranteed option to buy at the end of his loan spell. Lukaku has kept communication up with Inter Milan over the past few months. Realistically, that is the only club he want to go back to. He's ruled out ever going to Bayern Munich, for example. So if we want to move him on, we have to make sure that Inter Milan are able to get a deal struck for the player. And reports are suggesting that we may be a little bit more flexible when it comes to making this happen. And one area of importance is a player exchange involving potentially 3 Inter Milan players as makeshifts to allow Lukaku to return back. Those 3 players are Skriniar, Bastoni, and of course Martinez as well too. And when you consider that so many reports are suggesting that Inter Milan may not be able to actually afford a deal like this, I think finding alternatives, find solutions is the best possible thing for both clubs to do. Currently, Inter Milan are hoping that Lukaku can continue to push and force a move away from the club. Remember, Inter Milan must get this deal completed before the 30th of June this month, of course, to exercise the growth decree law. And it seems like Lukaku, of course, is adamant that if he leaves the club he supports, then he must go back to Inter Milan. That's the only solution. Now, Italian reports have suggested that one argument that Lukaku was using behind the scenes is the fact that, realistically, if he goes back to Inter Milan, an environment that he knows, loves, etc., etc., that would be the best way for him to get back to his best football, of course, and to boost his transfer value as well too. Now, when we signed Lukaku, originally his transfer value on transfer market was around 90 million. It's now currently set at 76.5 million. And you can expect that valuation to continue to fall and fall and fall. And this is where I want to give you guys an opinion of mine. And I'm going to use Fernando Torres as an example. Now, of course, Torres, we'll never forget that goal he scored against Barcelona. It's going to live in our hearts forever. But realistically, considering the money we spent, the 200k plus wages he was on as well too, he did not live up to the goods. And eventually, when we had to move him on, and once it was realised that he was not going to be able to fulfill his potential at the club, there was no market for the guy. You know, he was on eternal loans himself, going to Milan, Atleti plus more. And you're doing that, of course, so you can make some money back, at least from loan fees. But at the same time, we were still heavily subsidising his wages when he was at Atletico Madrid and AC Milan as well too. I don't want to be in the same situation for Lukaku, who's on literally like nearly double the money that Torres was on. And I think Lukaku's argument makes a lot more sense. You know, if he goes back to Inter Milan, cooks there, he's going to boost the value and it's going to make it even easier to get the money back on this transfer deal. You guys were Chelsea fans. We've been in this situation so many times with players. Look at another example like Bakayoko, the guy who was supposed to replace Matic. He's still on the books. He can't play for us because he's not good enough, and we'll never fully get that money back for the player. Let's not make the same mistake again. So right now, for the second part of this story, let's go into greater detail discussing the three possible players that could be exchanged in this deal: Skriniar, Martinez and Bastoni. I want to start off with Skriniar first. I'll give my opinion, and I want to say this first before I go into greater detail. Skriniar, of course, is a top-level great defender, and of course he has the quality to play for a club like us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is the correct profile that I personally feel is needed here for next season. I'm going to explain my point, of course, in this video. Now, cynically, a part of me is thinking, is he on Rudiger's level? Absolutely not. Can he become better than Rudiger? I don't think so, actually. I guess that's not really an insult. That's just telling you just how good Rudiger was and how important he was for us over these past 18 months. Now let's talk about the things that Skriniar is very good at. Now, of course, he's built his reputation as a very solid, reliable defender in Serie A over many seasons now. He's come back after having a little dip. Conte rejuvenated him. He has done good for Inzaghi as well too. And when you look at his game, he is very composed on the ball when it comes to passing. Very good composure, very good ball playing ability. I'd say at times maybe he's a bit more safer with his passes, even though he can play vertically as well too. When it comes to how he would complement playing for Tuchel, I think he has the goods. Of course, when Hakimi was at Inter Milan, Hakimi is bombing forward out wide. We know how Tuchel uses his wide centre backs in our system, and Reece James gets forward as well too. You need a defender that is comfortable on the ball to step out, of course, to cover the spaces left and behind, which means your possession, of course, has to be a lot higher up the field to keep that balance in the team. And Skriniar proved that he can do this quite easily. Let's not forget that there was one game where he even played as like a DM against the England national team, which really highlights his composure and quality on the ball. When I see him, he's a player that does the basics of a very high level. And in a sense, I do get a bit of like Ivanovic vibes from him. But for me, even though he is a very good player, he isn't the profile I feel we actually need for next season. I think with Rudiger's loss, we're missing that defender, of course, that can link the attack in that sense, that can push forward, that can switch the play, etc, etc, and who is aerially dominant as well too. And I don't think that Skriniar is that same profile. I think aerially he could be a lot better. And in the Premier League too, when there's a lot of long balls to fight for, I just think that he could get caught out at times. Like I said, he is good on the ball, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to ping like a 70-yard switchboard to find the wing back. That's just never really been his game. And for me, I think the biggest concern is that when Koundé is literally incoming, it doesn't make any sense to go for a player that plays in Koundé's position. I mean, Skriniar, of course, has played on the left-hand side as well too, but has mainly played more on the right-hand side of these past few seasons. And with Koundé coming, I just don't think you need two players fighting for one spot. It doesn't make much sense. And another concern for me is the fact that Skriniar's contract does end in a year's time, which means that his current valuation is really, really low. And I think it's just way too low to use him as like an effective makeshift in any deal involving Lukaku. I'd see why Inter Milan potentially would be open to letting him go. Of course, they're literally signing Bremer as well too. It could be a natural replacement for him, but as I'm really stressing, he is a very good player, but not every good player can actually play in our system. You know, different systems require different players. So let's now move on to the main target I would only accept really in any move involving Lukaku, and of course that is Lautaro Martinez. Now, you guys have been watching me for a few years on the channel now. You heard me first talk about the player back when he was playing in Argentina. I just love everything about his game, and it's no surprise to me that he's blossoming to be one of the best strikers in Europe. I mean, I think he got like 27 plus goals last season for Inter Milan, and just his entire game and profile, you know, he's stocky, he has a great low center of gravity, he's very good at dropping deeper to link up the players well too. He has that unpredictability factor. He's a player that can score every single type of goal, and for me these are what separates the very top strikers from very good ones. Goals from outside the box from nothing, goals where he's beating his man to score, goals where it's a header inside the box, or timing his run, or a link up, or just like or goals where he's improvising. I think he scores every single type of goal, and as I've said already before, it's kind of funny that, you know, when we targeted a striker last summer, we didn't just target Martinez instead, who I think is a much more natural fit in terms of what Tuchel is trying to bring. I could easily see him linking up alongside of Dembele, Kai, Mount, possibly Nkunku, who knows, plus many other players as well too. I think it'd be very ironic that let's say Lukaku returned back and then we literally just like send his boy to us in the opposite direction. That would kind of sum up like Lukaku's Chelsea career, to be fair. Like, nothing goes his way, but me, I think he's the only player I would take in any deal. Of course, Martinez is very happy to remain here, but let's not forget, last summer Lukaku was also very happy to remain as well too, so let's see if something can come. I think this guy's a phenomenal striker. And I guess for an alternative, another player that I would consider, it would have to be Bastoni. Now, we know that he's linked currently with Man United and Spurs, with, you know, Conte desperate to bring his man back, and for me, I understand why. I think if Bastoni went to Spurs, and Spurs' defense becomes absolutely crazy, because for me, I think he is like the perfect replacement really for Antonio Rudiger. Now, let's look at how Inter Milan play on Inzaghi. There are differences between how Conte played and how Inzaghi plays. I mean, Inzaghi's more like possession-based and, you know, pressing higher up the field. And what he does with his back three is essentially Bastoni is the main creator. He's the guy that spearheads the attacks from deep. He's the player tasked and licensed with pushing further up, you know, with carrying the ball there, playing those line-breaking passes, playing those crosses in the box, playing them switch balls. And we actually look at the team shape in a way. It makes so much sense why Perisic had such an incredible season at Inter Milan, because essentially Perisic kind of played more like a winger, with Bastoni kind of being like a left back instead. And to allow this to happen, of course, Skriniar dropped deeper, and the wing back on the opposite side, of course, dropped deeper as well too. That tells you everything you need to know about just how cultured this guy is on the ball, and just how cultured he is with his left foot. I definitely feel like we could take advantage of having a player with a left foot in the team. I think you could have great competition alongside him and Cole, for example. Best thing about Rudiger under Thomas Tuchel was those underlapping runs he was constantly making. If we're gonna have this system cook even more, I need to see more players who complement that style of play, and I think Bastoni is probably the best one on the market actually to really fulfill that role left by Rudiger. Interesting times, you guys, but I guess the promising news behind this Lukaku report now is that there's really a willingness from all parties now to make something happen. I think Inter Milan have some very exciting and interesting players that could definitely benefit our team. Who knows? So we have to see how this continues to play out. So on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Line CV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.